Welcome, folks. So we are just now starting to get some cooler mornings here in Florida, and my water pump decided that it could no longer hang out with us. So while I'm waiting on the coolant to drain out of this here radiator, we're gonna do an unboxing. As you can see, VEVOR has sent us out a product here to try out, and it is none other than a stick welder, 200 amp. 110, 220 volt, but this isn't the only function that caught my eye, and I'll explain a little bit whenever we get this thing out of the box. This. I don't think I've ever seen somebody ship one welding rod with. I'm cracking myself up. That's interesting. I don't even know what this is. It's got some Chinesium writing on it and J422, something like that. I have no idea. Let's open these just for the sake of seeing what information we got in here. So anything useful here? All right, we'll come back to that if we need it. But this is supposed to be a 200 amp stick welder. Positive, negative, infinite adjust here. I'm not sure what that does. I'm sure we got to turn it on first. We've got our 110 to 220 adapter, and out of the machine we've got 110. And I think I mentioned this before, but this is kind of dangerous because this could get left plugged in, and then you'd be plugging in 220 volts to a 110 volt system, whether that be a grinder or what have you, and somebody not knowing what this is could be potentially dangerous. But nonetheless, 110, 220. Very, I don't know if you can see this, but there's still some plastic on the top side. There's copper underneath, but there's still plastic that's over top of the this top draw, I guess you could say. But about what you would expect, I guess, from I want to say this on Amazon right now, it was like $89, something like that, but you get the idea. Ground is somehow better than the Stinger, but should work just fine. And then moving this out of the way so we can get to what really caught my eye, and I'll explain here in a minute as well. But I've seen a video, I don't know if you know what these are, but I've seen a video of, I'm sure I saw it on Instagram or something like that, but basically it's a plastic repair apparatus. So like for auto body and or you name it, sometimes you get a crack in plastic, and you can't really, you can try melting it together, heating it up and pushing it together, trying to do it that way, but it doesn't always work. But this here, I have no idea the proper thing to call this, but basically you can melt plastics together with a mechanical connection rather than just trying to more or less melt them to each other. So I actually did something like this similar, and I just made it up as I went. But whenever VEVOR offered this up, I thought that was super neat, and I wanted to try it out for myself. So this is pretty neat. So let's try this thing out and see if we can fix our plastics and also weld the car back together. All right, so power's on the back. We're gonna turn it on. And okay, so we can switch between a couple functions here. MMA lift TIG hot stapler. That's I guess what it's called. But that's what I am most intrigued about. Well, let's see if we can weld something with this. We're gonna go. We're gonna try out the supplied rod here, and then I've got a 6010, 8010, and then 3/32 7018 and 1/8 7018. So for that first one, I'm gonna start with, let's say 90, because that should be about okay for the 6010. So let's give it a shot. So this welds like a 6013. If anybody knows what that is, it's pretty. I don't want to say outdated, but I don't know of anybody that uses 6013 anymore. But it's pretty hot for that, so I'm gonna turn it down a little bit. Let's go with 80 amps over here. That's terrible. All right, well, aside from the fact that 6013 is just, it welds like you're welding in a bowl of mud. And that's kind of what it looks like too if it's not done right. All right, can you explain that? Because that looks pretty all right, but while it was welding, there's just so much slag in it that it looked like there was going to be a lot of porosity in it, but somehow that turned out to be a pretty good looking weld. I'm gonna try 6010 1/8 now. That's what I got here. Typically 6010 8010 doesn't like to run on, I'm assuming this is an inverter machine because it's so tiny, but a lot of times the smaller machines don't like 6010 8010. So let's see what that looks like. Nice arc strike. Somehow that's not terrible either. I was on 80 amps still. Alright, show you that in a minute. I'm going to bump up to 532 8010. I'm going to bump up the heat to say 110. Try that. I am on 220. It was a bit aggressive, but somehow that looks good also. So there we had our free welding rod that came with it, 6010, 8010. It may have been a little too high on the heat, but it was very aggressive, there was a lot of spatter involved with it as well, but cleaned up okay. So I'm gonna try some 7018 now. First up is 3/32 7018 Lincoln. I'm gonna drop this down to about I'm gonna say 85, since we're welding 1/8 inch plate here. All right, I think that's gonna look pretty pretty good. Bump up now to 1/8 7018. I'm gonna bump up the heat to say 120 amps on the readout. I don't know if that's too hot or... So it really liked that 3/32 7018, but the 1/8 it was probably just too small thickness of plate, and just a lot of amperage needed to run that rod. It just didn't really like it that much. But surprisingly enough, everything looks good. Surprisingly well for how small the that welder is. So let's move on to what intrigues me about this thing. All right, so what we have here is I guess it's called a hot stapler. I didn't know what they were necessarily called. I just knew that they were kind of neat. But basically, it's a hot iron for plastic, if you want to call it that. But we got a little button here, and then this heats up to however hot you need it to be, I guess. Starting to glow red there. But basically, we'll get some plastic to try it out. But it's, as I mentioned, it's a mechanical connection to join like a straight seam of plastic, rather than trying to heat it up and meld it together. So I used this. It was much more crude than this, but I'll go show you what I did, because I saw the idea, but I didn't know what they were called or knew how to get one or anything like that. So all right, so the lighting in here is gonna be terrible, but we went riding a couple months back with a buddy of mine, and we may or may not have collided down a trail, and anyhow I wound up ripping this fork guard off. So what I did was I just took some stainless TIG wire, heated it up, and basically did the same thing. It does not look as good, but it's been holding up for a couple rides now, and it's sturdy. I did try to meld them together to begin with, just heating up the ends and more or less trying to fuse them together, and it didn't hold up at all until I basically made a mechanical connection. Another reason why I repaired it rather than getting a new one was because this is a factory edition bike, so therefore the plastics are a little more not universal, and they're harder to come by. I couldn't find a replacement one just like it, but I had to buy a pair. But I figured I could at least buy, or try to repair it and let it see if it will hold up temporarily while I ordered a new set. But it's been holding up just fine ever since, for at least a few rides now. This is some old pieces of a second-gen Dodge Dash, and I figured it was only fitting since these things shatter. As you can see, it doesn't take much, and they're in 1,000 pieces. But nonetheless, we're gonna see if we can make these become one. So there's two settings, there's 1 and 2 on it. So I'm assuming 1 is the lower setting, 2 is more, we'll see. So aside from it being obviously the terrible material, that worked out pretty well. You can see there. Here, let's put that back together too. Interesting. Well, I think you get the idea. It's pretty neat. When I saw one on, I forget, I'm pretty sure I saw it on Instagram or something somewhere, but I thought it was pretty neat. And if this wasn't terrible plastic, see, look, holds pretty well. It broke around it, but let me try something better real quick. All right, well, I'm happy with that. So obviously what you would do from here is you trim off all your little nubs sticking up here, and then sand it down, body filler, whatever you would after to fix plastic if you were doing it for cosmetic purposes. But in total, it works out pretty well. All right, well, I guess if you need to fix your bumper and then also weld your door shut, this might be the machine for you. So check it out in the description below. See you all in the next video. Thanks, guys.